Today we're going to dive deep into the questions surrounding the case and try to get to the bottom of this deep rabbit hole. This is the Chris Benoit Conspiracies.
I have checkers. I was there, I told him to. I guess. So imagine somebody fucking... You get put into an angle with another guy where he takes your wife in storyline and then he just ends up doing it in real life. He actually
As
just
the
takes your
leader of
bitch.
the Dungeon of Doom, Sullivan had compiled a large stable of people with bizarre gimmicks. This was a continuation of an evil Satanist gimmick that Sullivan had portrayed throughout the 80s, and part of that gimmick was his valet, the fallen angel, Nancy. Behind the scenes, Nancy and Sullivan were actually married, and Nancy resumed her role as Sullivan's valet, now under the name Woman in WCW. As part of the rivalry between Sullivan and Benoit, Sullivan decided to book an affair between Benoit and Woman. In addition to their...
Oh, he booked... What happened? What the fuck is this?
Disclaimer.
He booked that shit? That's crazy. So I'm gonna ask again. Imagine you book an affair angle, and then the guy actually takes your bitch. I'd kill the family too.
Sullivan decided to book an affair between Benoit and Woman. In addition to their on-screen actions, Benoit and Nancy were expected to keep up the act outside the ring in order to sell the angle, holding hands in public and even sharing hotel rooms to convince the public that the affair that they were seeing on screen was real.
Crazy.
The performance...
What if he was just a cuck? Like, what if Kevin Sullivan was actually just into that shit and then just like, because like that's not out of this world. Like Vince fucking put his fetishes on fucking TV. He's done that shit. Imagine a cuck said, "Hey, you just have her."
Was so thorough that Benoit worried it would anger his real-life wife, Martina, who he also had 2 children with. He had asked officials at WCW to ensure his wife that everything with Nancy was just for a storyline, but soon, life began to imitate art. Despite both of them being married, the on-screen affair between Nancy and Benoit blossomed into a real-life affair, creating an awkward situation for all involved. Nancy would also accuse Sullivan of abuse, claiming that numerous black eyes and other injuries were from altercations with Sullivan, and after all of those accusations, she went to Benoit for help and comfort. Benoit and Nancy would both receive divorces in 1997, and Sullivan's relationship with Benoit turned contentious. Not only had Benoit taken Sullivan's wife, but Sullivan likely felt some embarrassment.
I just got to ask in the chat, what if he was a cuck? You know what I mean? Like, what if he booked that shit? Because you just liked it. Like, yeah, bro, just take my wife.
From being the one who booked his own divorce. Many of his subsequent matches featured stiff shots exchanged from the two, including one occasion where Benoit ruptured Sullivan's eardrum on a punch. Benoit and Nancy would eventually give birth to their son, Daniel Benoit, in February of 2000, marrying shortly after. Benoit continued to wrestle for WCW into 2000, but he soon became disillusioned with the company. Benoit, along with some of the younger, smaller wrestlers, felt that there was a glass ceiling for them at WCW due to the older wrestlers keeping all of the main event opportunities for themselves. In a last-ditch effort to try and keep him in WCW, Benoit was given the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in early 2000. But even winning the company's top prize could not placate Benoit. Kevin Sullivan had been promoted to head booker, and Benoit, who had already had his reservations about management, refused to work with him and left the company the very next day after winning the title. Benoit, along with a bunch of other cruiserweights, then jumped ship from WCW to WWE. Very quickly, Benoit positioned himself as a breakout star within the WWE. He climbed up the ranks over the years, winning several championships, but perhaps his most significant year in his career was 2004. In this year, Benoit won the Royal Rumble, becoming only the second ever man to win the match from the #1 position. This led Benoit to winning his first and only WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
Bro, Mania triple threats are like always so fucking good when they're like for the title.
at WrestleMania 20, defeating
This one
Triple
was a
H
banger,
and
the
Shawn
one with Daniel
Michaels in
Bryan
a
in it
triple
was a
threat
banger.
match. On the same night, Benoit's best friend, Eddie Guerrero, successfully defended his WWE Championship, and after Benoit had won the title, Eddie came out to congratulate him. The show closed with the two best friends, now the two top champions in the company, embracing as confetti fell. Unfortunately, this feel-good moment proved to be one of the last great moments in the lives of either men. On November 13, 2005, Eddie Guerrero was found dead in his hotel room as a result of heart failure. The news rocked the wrestling
Yo, RIP to your big homie, he gets 5 big booms.
world, but hit Benoit especially hard. Benoit, who was considered by most to be aloof already, was devastated by the sudden loss of his best friend. Those close to him talked of how inconsolable Benoit was behind closed doors, often sobbing over his fallen friend whenever he was alone. Benoit became even more reclusive around his fellow wrestlers and began to bring that reclusiveness home with him when he was with Nancy. Benoit was always said to have a very devoted family life, with many of the wrestlers praising Benoit's love for his children and his wife Nancy. Nancy, having retired from wrestling in 1997, had taken to managing the household, but despite their outward happiness, all was
That
not well
picture
in the
is so
Benoit
terrible.
household.
This one too. What are these fucking terrible pictures? You have the screenshot from the fucking show. Like, what is this? Like, what the fuck?
With both Chris and Nancy being strong-willed, fights between the two were relatively common, but on one occasion in 2003, Nancy alleged that Chris put his hands on her. The altercation resulted in a restraining order being out on
Damn,
Benoit
the guy
to
with
keep him
anger issues actually ended up killing her? Oh, dude, that's crazy.
from the house, as well as a divorce filing. Nancy cited that the marriage between the two was irrevocably broken, and she said that she had received cruel treatment as part of the filing. Benoit did manage to apologize to Nancy through the help of her sister, and this caused both the divorce filing and the restraining order to be dropped. After his best friend Eddie died, Nancy and Chris's relationship got worse. Nancy was said to be upset at his roid usage and claimed that his personality changed when he was roided up.
Oh, that's crazy how that works. You're roided up, you already have fucking anger problems, and then you're roided the fuck up and you're pissed off because your man's is RIP.
On top of it all,
Damn.
his fights with Nancy increased as he began to lose more and more control over his emotions. Nancy even suggested that Benoit retire from wrestling to focus on his mental health, as his time on the road was consistently marked by memories of Guerrero's passing. But Benoit continued to throw himself into his work, and by June of 2007, he had been moved to the ECW brand of WWE. Benoit was in a program with CM Punk, where the plan was for him to win the ECW championship at the upcoming pay-per-view, Vengeance. Benoit, however, wasn't present for the house shows in the weekend prior to the event. He called his friend on the road and Eddie's nephew, Chavo Guerrero, and left a message telling him that Nancy and Daniel was suffering from food poisoning, so that's why he wasn't able to make the shows. Chavo called Benoit back to confirm the message, but noted that Benoit sounded groggy and tired. Chavo then called
Thoughts on WWE's ECW? It would have been good if it wasn't on the Sci-Fi Network. They could have did something cool with it if it was not on Sci-Fi, and if they let Heyman book it, would have been so much better. Because it would have had the same vibe, and they wouldn't have had a contractual obligation to have shitty sci-fi characters. That's where you got that fucking zombie dude from. It was almost good. Great concept, executed the worst way possible.
called Benoit again 12 minutes later, concerned by how the phone call ended, but had to leave a message as Benoit didn't pick up. When Benoit did call back a few minutes later, he said that he had been talking with the airlines about changing his flights for the pay-per-view, and apologized for sounding stressed with everything going on with his family. He then ended the call by telling Chavo he loved him, which Chavo would later mention he put a particular emphasis on. After more phone calls with various WWE officials reiterating that his wife and child had food poisoning, Benoit told Chavo that he was scheduled to arrive in Houston the following day at 8 a.m. However, that night, Chavo received 5 text messages between 3:51 a.m. and 3:58 a.m.
The dogs are in the back.
The first few texts were just Benoit's home address, with one text stating, "The dogs are in the enclosed pool area and the back door is open." Chavo then received the exact same text message, this time from Nancy's cell phone. The next morning, after Benoit never arrived at the scheduled flight, Chavo discovered that WWE referee Scott Armstrong had received the same text messages the night before. After no-showing the pay-per-view and still not having heard from Benoit in over 24 hours, Chavo showed the concerning text messages to WWE Vice President of Talent Relations, John Laurinaitis. With still no word from Benoit and now worried by the texts, WWE officials decided to send a wellness check to Benoit's home in Fayetteville, Georgia on the afternoon of June 25th. There, the police found the bodies of Chris, Nancy, and Daniel Benoit, all in different rooms of the house and all dead. They informed the WWE that they had found the bodies and that the home was being ruled.
Who do you have this weekend at the Chamber? Deadass, I forgot they were doing that. Shit, fuck. Who's even in it? Who's in it? It's what? Punk, Drew, Priest, Logan, Punk. Yeah, Punk, Drew, Priest, Logan, Rollins, and fucking Cena, right? I ain't gonna lie, it's gonna either be, I think it'll either be Punk or Cena.
A major crime scene. Despite not having the full details, other than the home being a crime scene,
I would like for it to be Cena, but if it's not, then Punk would be alright.
Night's edition of Monday Night Raw into a 3-hour tribute show for Chris Benoit, featuring his greatest moments and testimonials from the heartbroken wrestlers. The next day, reports started to come out from Georgia that the Benoit tragedy was being investigated as a murder, with Chris Benoit being the only suspect. In a rapid pivot, ahead of their Tuesday night SmackDown show, Vince McMahon addressed the allegations and promised that there would be no mention of Chris Benoit on WWE programming going forward. Meanwhile, the police began to report on what they believed the order of events that took place at the Benoit household, and they came up with this. On Friday, the family was having a barbecue, but at some point in the night, an altercation began between Nancy and Chris. As the fight escalated, Chris bound Nancy's limbs with cables and duct tape and gagged her with a balled-up tube sock and tape. He then pressed his knee into Nancy's back and strangled her to death with a telephone wire.
Imagine you're just at like a barbecue, just chilling, and then like 10 minutes later, like,
Nancy's body was found wrapped in a blanket with a Bible laid next to her. The next day, on Saturday, officials say that Benoit gave his 7-year-old son, Daniel, a high dose of Xanax to sedate him. While Daniel was likely unconscious from the medication, Benoit suffocated him, leaving him in his bed and again, leaving a Bible. Daniel's throat showed
that's kind of crazy.
No bruising, but did present internal injuries. It was after Daniel's murder that Benoit first called Chavo Guerrero to tell him that Nancy and Daniel had food poisoning. The next day on Sunday, Benoit removed the bar from his lat pull-down machine, wrapped the cord around his neck, and released the weights, thus dying by strangulation.
Don't die by strangulation from that. Your fucking neck gets snapped. Snapped as shit. Did you not? Am I mistaken? I feel like that much weight on your fucking neck. Yeah.
It was reported that Benoit's computer had recent searches about the biblical prophet Elijah raising a boy from the dead, and also about the easiest ways to break one's own neck.
Damn.
However, police reports indicate that there was no damage to Benoit's vertebrae or trachea, suggesting that he did not actually break his neck. Though no note was initially found in the investigation, Benoit's father has since said that Benoit left a handwritten note in his own Bible saying, "I'm preparing to leave this earth." The public was left scrambling to try and understand the motives and reasons behind the sudden and tragic events. As the media frenzy increased, with the story called The Crippler murdering his family, Roids became the primary suspect in what went wrong for Chris Benoit. As Chris was notably undersized, it was said that he had been
roids, anger, medical problems, head fucking trauma, hella anger issues, hella drug problems, hella relationship problems, and then your best friend, which is the only guy you could talk to, ain't even there. I would have killed. I would have killed him too. I would have did it too. Imagine that. That's so fucking crazy. No shit. He fucking hella fat what? What?
Been using roids and human growth hormones since his teen years in order to gain muscle
what?
mass. Following Eddie Guerrero's death in 2005, the WWE instituted a new wellness program, and some within the company argued that Benoit couldn't have been abusing roids because it would have popped up during wellness checks. However, particularly in the early days of the program, it was known that there was massive loopholes to allow wrestlers to continue to use performance-enhancing drugs. Nancy's text to Chris indicate as much, saying that everyone knew the wellness program was a farce. The WWE continued to defend themselves against the media outcry over Benoit's alleged roid abuse, specifically arguing that the premeditated nature
Undertaker's promo on SmackDown vs. Raw towards Chris was so eerie. That's just coincidence.
of placing a Bible by each body shows that the murders were not a case of roid-induced rage.
I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, but I hate when people use examples like that and they're like, oh, it had to have been a setup. Because of, see, this thing here that is completely irrelevant, and they're like reaching like so far.
However, once the autopsy reports were released, they showed outrageously high levels of testosterone in Benoit's body at the time of the murders, which indicated roid use. However, neuroscientist and former wrestler Chris Nowinski had a different theory than roid rage for what happened to Chris Benoit. Nowinski had been studying
big meaty men on roids. You did not have to word it like that, but yeah.
Effects of concussions on the brain, specifically in reference to CTE, and before Benoit had died, he reached out to Nowinski about his research. Benoit was known for taking massive trauma to the head, whether in the form of unprotected steel chair shots or his own diving headbutt maneuver.
The pictures do not have to be this pixelated, bro. Oh my god.
Chris Benoit even once said that he had lost track of the amount of concussions he suffered in his career. After the murders, Nowinski shared his CTE theories with Benoit's father. Nowinski was then granted access to Benoit's brain, which was tested, and the test revealed that Benoit had so much brain damage that he equated to an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient, and that's
And about that, y'all remember when Vince said, "Oh well, if he had the brain of a man with Alzheimer's, how did he get on the plane to go to the shows every night? How did he remember how? Like, no, you fucking retard. He didn't say that he had Alzheimer's. The amount of damage done to his brain was equal to the amount that Alzheimer's would have done to a fucking 80-year-old walking fucking skeleton." Stone Cold tried to say he doesn't believe in CTE. Stone Cold's a fucking retard.
That CTE was present in all 4 lobes of his brain. It was believed that this level of brain trauma could lead to dementia, but also to a change in emotional behavior, and could have been the leading cause behind the Benoit murders.
Y'all remember when Steve Austin beat the shit? Nah. No.
These are, of course, the facts that have been presented to us since that fateful day in 2007. But as is the case with any heinous crime, multiple conspiracy theories have cropped up over the years to try and explain the murders that seem to occur out of nowhere. A big factor that many conspiracy theorists point to is the inconsistencies in the police report and subsequent investigation, as well as odd happenings at the crime scene. Going back to the day of the wellness check, the Fayetteville police who arrived there were initially unable to enter Benoit's home because of his 2 German shepherds that were roaming free in the yard. This was odd for 2 reasons. First, Benoit's cryptic text to Chavo specifically said that his dogs were in the enclosed pool area, but obviously that was no longer the case. Secondly, the police ended up asking Benoit's neighbor, who had a history and good rapport with the dogs, to go in and move them. It was during this request that Benoit's neighbor first encountered the body of Daniel Benoit and alerted the police that something was wrong. But where questions abound with this entire situation is, even though the police didn't know what had happened in the house yet.
See, he said the dogs were in the back, and then when they went to the crib, they were out front.
Why would they send an outsider into the home that could have potentially been a crime scene? By entering the home before the police did, Benoit's neighbor could very well have contaminated the crime scene. Another question here is, why would Chris send Chavo a text where he's addressed?
The neighbor probably didn't say shit, but probably opened the shit up for the fucking dogs or something. Hey, I know the dogs. They like me. Let me open the door for them. They look like they want to get out.
is if Chavo already knew where Chris lived, considering that Chavo spent the previous weekend at Chris's house. There are other little details within the reports and crime scenes that, when put together, also pose more questions. For example, a knife was found underneath Daniel's bed, but there was no
Right after he said that, I went on to say he's been concussed so many times he doesn't remember having a concussion. Make it make sense. Yeah. I mean, like the part of him not remembering having a concussion, that's not the thing. It's the fact he's had so many. So yeah, you got that shit, bro. Everybody. I don't remember who exactly said it. They said every single wrestler has CTE to some degree.
Instances of it being used on any of the victims.
No way
Fingerprints were never
even when they're safer in the ring. There's no possible
taken at the crime scene or throughout the investigation as well. There were also 10 empty beer cans and an empty bottle of wine found near Chris's body. Despite this, he tested negative for alcohol. The toxicology reports confirmed that Chris had hydrocodone, a painkiller, and Xanax, an anti-anxiety drug, in his system. Some conspiracy theorists believe that the drugs found in his system would render him sleepy and unable to fight back potential intruders in his home. Police used the level of decomposition in the bodies to piece together a timeline, and the conclusion was that Nancy died on Friday, Daniel died on Saturday, and Chris died on Sunday. However, some conspiracy theorists have argued that the varying temperatures in the rooms where the murders took place may make decomposition an unreliable indicator. The police reports on where Nancy's body was found also changed a few times. At first, they said that Nancy was found in an upstairs bedroom, then they said that Nancy was found in the basement, and then they changed it back to that she was found in an upstairs bedroom. There's also the troubling belief that the police were not able to recover Benoit or Nancy's cell phones, the same ones where they sent a text to Chavo and Scott Armstrong. There have also been questions surrounding the body of Chris Benoit, which was reported in different positions depending on the officer. One officer said that Benoit was found lying on the floor next to the machine, while another officer said that Benoit was slumped against the machine. Benoit was also allegedly found with a towel around his...
It's almost like eyewitness testimony is like nothing. Doesn't matter. Because what is this shitty AI edited fucking picture? Like what the fuck? His face looks so fucking weird. His eyes are like... not in the right spot.
neck. This has led many conspiracy theorists to wonder why
you got one guy saying one thing and the other guy says almost that thing but kind of different. And it's like, alright, so who's the dumb one?
Person who was seeking to take their own life would care about the potential scars on their neck. Chris also placed Bibles next to Nancy and Daniel's bodies, but there was no Bible found next to Chris's body. Conspiracy theorists asked the question, why would he place a Bible beside Nancy and Daniel and not one beside himself if he knew he was going to take his own life?
That motherfucker was going to hell, he knew that.
The crime scene was not the cleanest, which has allowed some people to speculate.
He did.
That the police either did not know or could not know all of the possible information about the situation. Another troubling question that conspiracy theorists have.
He looks like that young boy that comes into Dunkin' with his mom with the fat ass. Who? And what the fuck are you? What? What?
Come up with is, why would he tie Nancy up in order to murder her? They argue that Benoit was a big and strong guy and that he could have just hit her very hard in order to knock her out cold and then proceed to murder her. The other troubling fact that people cannot seem to get their head around is the motive Benoit would have had for murdering his...
I don't remember who. I'm trying to think who like. I don't be up front. I don't see the customers. So I wouldn't know. I don't fucking know. And then when they're on their way out, I don't fucking stare at them. They're not. The second they walk away from me, they're not real. They leave the fucking door. They walk out the door. They don't exist no more.
Family. Obviously, there were issues in Chris and Nancy's marriage, as highlighted with their previous marital problems. Even with the potential issues with Nancy, though, it doesn't
look at this. Like what is this shit?
Entirely explain why.
Look at her fucking face, bro. This is pissing me off. I can't even fucking focus on the actual.
Why Benoit would want to kill her, much less Daniel. Everyone who has ever spoken about Chris Benoit talked about how much he loved his son, making it all the harder to envision why Benoit would take Daniel's life. It was also...
You know the goofiest thing, bro? I think David is actually fucking insane. Because he's like, oh, my dad's my hero. If you were in that house, he would have killed you. No bullshit. No rebuttal, no ifs, ands, or buts. He would have fucking, oh my god. It's so crazy. Like, that's my goat, but like, still, oh my fucking god, you're insane.
Revealed that paranoia began to pop up towards the end of Benoit's life, as he developed a fascination with stories of famous people who had family members get kidnapped, and he began to think that somebody was following him, so he began to take alternate routes while driving. These fears led him to taking a life insurance policy on himself, one in which his ex-wife and children were named as beneficiaries. Benoit had also apparently opened a Canadian bank account in his ex-wife's name, which infuriated Nancy. Many conspiracy theorists asked the questions: why would Benoit take such measures? Did he think that he was in trouble? Was he being threatened, and was he trying to ensure that his ex-wife and children would be protected if something were to happen to him? These conspiracies all lead to one man, someone who potentially would have had the motivation to murder Benoit and his family, and especially to ruin Benoit's reputation in the process: Kevin Sullivan. As mentioned earlier, Sullivan and Benoit had a strong dislike for each other following their time in WCW. Even though Benoit would make a point to praise Sullivan for his professional nature in the ring despite their differences, Benoit's abrupt defection from WCW the day after Sullivan became the head booker showed that there was no love lost between the two men. Sullivan also never remarried after losing Nancy to Chris, and some have speculated that he never truly got over the loss of Nancy or the embarrassing way it happened.
I would be mad as fuck
some
too.
People have that Sullivan's Satanism was more than just a gimmick he portrayed on television. The quest for revenge and the religious elements in the murder, between the Bibles present at the crime scene and the Google searches on Elijah, would feed into the idea that a Satanist was behind the heinous crimes. Some have also speculated that Benoit's increasing paranoia could have been in response to when Kevin Sullivan said that he would kill him when they were in WCW. The timing of the murders was also oddly coincidental, as it happened 10 years to the day of Nancy's divorce with Sullivan. Rumors and speculation have also fueled many conspiracy theories.
Low-key, that's
Whether
wild.
the origin of these rumors are true or not. One of the most popular of these theories is the infamous Chavo Guerrero phone call. Allegedly, Chavo Guerrero, while relaying the story of his recollection of the murders in an article with WWE magazine, stated that he
no love lost, bullcrap, yeah, that's the thing. Is that there was no love to begin with. They had no love towards one another, so when they beef, none of it's lost.
Took part in a 45-minute phone call with Benoit on the Friday of the murders. Chavo claimed that their phone call had ended when Benoit went to answer a knock at the door, and following an audible
I'm fucking with John. That's great.
scuffle, the phone line went dead. This theory would explain how an outside party entered the home to the phone when Benoit went to answer a knock at the door, and following an audible scuffle, the phone line went dead. This theory would explain how an outside party entered the home to murder the Benoit family without subsequent sign of forced entry, and has been used to explain why Benoit sounded so off in the subsequent phone calls to Guerrero, including his emphasized "I love you."
The thing is, alright, so it said, it said the decomposition isn't 100% reliable, but it said Nancy Friday, Daniel Saturday, Chris Sunday, and it said Chris had the shit in his system. It's like, oh, he would have been tired and not been able to fight back. Or whatever. That's just gonna be in his system 2 days later. It's not gonna like run its course through his body. How long does that shit stay in the system? Because like, you would think that like, I'm gonna do this shit to your family and then give you fucking Xanax the next day. Like he would have been able to fucking fight them off. Unless I'm tripping. I'm retarded.
One of the more intriguing
I hit my head on Saturday on stream. Chill.
Conspiracy theories, however, was how much was known before the story was ever made public. From the very beginning, people wondered how it was possible WWE wasn't aware of the details surrounding Benoit's death before they put on their tribute show. This curiosity was further fueled by William Regal's tribute to Benoit that night on Raw, where many of the wrestlers sobbed and gave their heartfelt tribute honoring Benoit and expressing their love for him. Regal's words were oddly muted. Instead of extolling Benoit as a family man and a beloved friend, Regal spoke only of Benoit's incredible work ethic and ring acumen, to which
maybe they
people
weren't
found
fucking
very
close,
strange
bro.
considering the real circumstances. And
Blood
then
can't flow,
there was
drugs
the
can't flow through
infamous
the body. That's
Wikipedia
facts, that's
edit that
facts.
was made 14 hours before their bodies were found. On the Monday following the Vengeance pay-per-view that Benoit no-showed, an edit was made.
The Wikipedia edit being made time before they were found. What if it was a schizophrenic fan? Because Wikipedia, anybody has access to edit a Wikipedia article. So what if there's like a really autistic kid that is fixated on him, and then he ended up saying, "Oh, he wasn't at the pay-per-view. He must be dead."
On
and then
Benoit's
edited that
Wikipedia
shit.
page explaining his absence. The edit read, Chris
but
Benoit was replaced by Johnny Nitro for the ECW Championship match at Vengeance, as Benoit was not there due to personal reasons stemming from the death of his wife Nancy. This edit was made around 12:01 a.m., but the bodies of Nancy and Daniel and Chris wouldn't be discovered by police until 2:30 p.m., over 14 hours after the initial.
What if, okay, so they said that the neighbor was cool with the dogs. So what if the neighbor went to the crib, opened up the fucking back, let the dogs out, and then seen, because they said what? They said he's seen Daniel, right? So, Wiki's accurate, guys, don't worry. Yeah. So what if he went to go let out the dogs, because they said he was nice with the dogs and shit, seen Daniel or seen whoever he's seen, went and edited the shit because he's fucking weird, and then didn't contact the cops till later. What if he like went into the crib and like looked around and then was like, oh shit, and then didn't contact cops until later on?
Edit. Administrators at Wikipedia at the time of the initial edit pulled down the post and attempted to verify that the claims of Nancy's death had some weight behind them, asking for a specific citation that the editor could reference. There was also a second Wikipedia edit that was reposted by a user using a different IP address. They cited several pro wrestling websites as the basis of their claim.
The
police
IP,
involved in the
get his
case
home
were
address.
made aware of the eerie postings early on in the investigation, but seemed more annoyed by it than anything else. The police chief complained about using vital time and resources
the neighbor being a weirdo. I guess.
Investigate what was,
that was just off the top of my head,
just a hoax gone wrong, as there was no way anyone could have known what had happened to the Benoits by that point. Making things even more complicated, though,
I definitely would have questioned the neighbor like a little bit more.
The first Wikipedia edit mentioning the death of Nancy Benoit came from an IP address based in Stamford, Connecticut, the corporate home of WWE. A few days later, a 19-year-old man by the name of Matthew Greenberg confessed to making the edit, saying that he had read rumors and speculations as to Benoit's absence from.
So, like I said, a schizophrenic-ass fan spreading rumors, and then this guy just went ahead on Wikipedia and just changed it.
The pay-per-view, and that the whole thing was just a terrible coincidence. Stanford police questioned Greenberg about his potential knowledge of the Benoit murder case, and found that Greenberg had made it a habit of vandalizing Wikipedia pages. Ultimately, the police deemed Greenberg to be harmless and let him go, but that's not entirely where the story ends. Author Irvin Muchnick, while researching for his book, Chris and Nancy, decided to take.
Someone lives in their house. Now, I bet the property value is low as fuck. Nobody wants to live in a house that 3 motherfuckers died in.
Take a closer look into the entire Benoit case, but specifically
imagine knowing
to the Wikipedia.
The only way somebody would move into that crib is if somebody knows that it was specifically them and they're like not that weird about it. If you're like a regular guy, let's say you didn't know shit about wrestling, you didn't know who Chris and them were, and then you go to the crib and like, oh, by the way, there was, deaths in the household. Because I think they have to tell you that when they're about to sell a crib, and you're doing the viewing and you're walking through, it's like, yeah, so and so, died in the house, at this time, and it's like, oh, okay, damn. That way, if you believe in ghosts or whatever, shit like that. But I think you would have to at least be aware of what happened. Know about Chris and them, and then be like, you know what, I'd live in the house. This fucking house. It's a nice crib. I wouldn't mind that much.
Wikipedia coincidence.
Hardcore weird-ass wrestling fan, which is like, score, ha, booyah!
Asking if there was more of a connection between
no, I'm gonna kill my family in that house. We're gonna have it be a recurring thing.
One of the Wikipedia articles that Greenberg had spent time cleaning up in the past was Chavo Guerrero's. This has led to speculation as to whether or not Greenberg and Chavo Guerrero had some form of relationship. So, considering that Chavo was one of the only two people who received the ominous and troubling text messages from Benoit, the question then became whether or not Chavo could have tipped off Greenberg that something was going on, leading to the infamous Wikipedia post. As for the second edit from a separate IP user, that has been potentially attributed to someone on the WWE's chat room from the night of the event, where again, a number of users speculated that Benoit was absent from the show because his wife had passed away, with one user going as far to call Benoit a murderer. Once again, the user would come out days later to say that the whole thing was one big, horrible coincidence.
One big, horrible So the thing is, never what? What am I even saying? There's always going to be a really fucking weird fan. Go on DeviantArt and look at literally any fictional character that has ever existed in the history of cartoons being a fucking thing. You could have the most absolute nothing, irrelevant ass character, and there's gonna be an autistic fucking weirdo on DeviantArt that has a hyperfixation on that one thing. So, guys in the chat room speculating things to that fucking degree, they're probably at that level. Because there are people that, like, you look at Instagram, and there are people that are fucking crazy for specific stars, right? Amityville Horror for wrestling fans to... Yeah, I guess. I mean, shit. I do think it's just a weird-ass, schizophrenic-ass fan. When it comes to all the internet stuff related to it, it's just a fucking weirdo online. Being a fucking weirdo, or somebody putting their fucking nose in some shit. When it comes to the dogs and stuff, I think the neighbor just went in there, checked out the house, and was like, what the fuck? And then, you know, maybe seeing a body, he had to recover for a few hours. Like, damn, that shit fucked me up. Okay, it's time to call the cops now. I don't know, something like that. I definitely wasn't there.
In the end, conspiracy theories are a way for people to try and cope with and explain what is otherwise unexplainable. The story of a beloved wrestler snapping one day due to a deadly cocktail of stress, grief, drugs and brain damage and murdering his family is just too much for some people to bear. And when there are instances of unanswered questions or strange coincidences, as there are in the Benoit murders, people tend to try and fill in the blanks. We don't truly know what happened inside that house on that fateful weekend, but what we do know is the lasting effects the tragedy had on WWE and professional wrestling as a whole. In the immediate aftermath, Benoit was scrubbed from WWE's history, and even today, though his matches can still be found on the WWE Network and Peacock, there is still no mention of Benoit. The company also shifted from TV-14 to PG the following month as an effort to rehabilitate their public image in a change that would stick with WWE well into the 2020s. After Benoit died, the wellness policy was also ramped up to make sure that wrestlers do not use roids. The tragedy of Chris Benoit also caused stricter concussion protocols being implemented, and elements like unprotected chair shots to the.
Do y'all think this was one of those cases where it's like a necessary evil because WWE would not have been as careful, cautious, and professional as they are now if this had not happened? This was like the breaking point for them to really open the, wake the fuck up and like, be more safe. Type shit.
The head being eliminated as more information has come out regarding CTE. The Chris Benoit murders is undoubtedly one of the darkest days in wrestling history. Its grisly and shocking nature is why it is still talked about to this day by fans and onlookers alike, and it's also why conspiracy theories about the murders continue to crop up in many wrestling conversations to this day. The WWE may have done everything to erase Chris Benoit from the history, but there is truly no erasing the events of June 25th, 2007. Chris Benoit is certainly one of the most infamous wrestlers turned murderers, but another is Sonny, WWE's original diva. Sunny went from being the most downloaded woman on the internet to being sentenced to 17 years in jail for murder. If you want to see the meteoric rise and tragic downfall of Sunny,
nobody gives a fuck about that bitch. Anyway, good video. That's my goat. I don't care. That's still my goat. I don't give a fuck. W video. Age of Wrestling. Good shit, bro.